The microphone felt heavier than it should have in my trembling hands. 2,000 people sat in complete silence, waiting. In the front row, Ashley's face had gone from smug satisfaction to something I'd never seen before, panic. The dean stepped back, giving me the space I'd earned, and I could feel my parents leaning forward in their seats 3 rows behind her. This was it. 7 years of doubt, dismissal, and whispered comments about my little hobby degree had led to this single moment. I took a breath, looked directly at my cousin, and spoke the words that would change everything between us forever. Hi. I'm Madison. And this is the story of how my own family tried to destroy the proudest moment of my life, and how I turned it into something they'll never forget. The cap kept sliding forward on my head as I adjusted it for the 10th time in 5 minutes. Cornell's graduation ceremony was everything I'd dreamed it would be: the Gothic architecture, the sea of black robes, the weight of accomplishment settling on my shoulders like a warm blanket. 7 years of night classes, weekend labs, and balancing 3 part-time jobs had led to this moment. Madison. My mom's voice cut through the crowd of graduates gathering on the lawn. She was waving frantically, her phone already out for pictures. Dad stood beside her in the suit he'd worn to my sister's wedding, the one that made his shoulders look broader than they were. I made my way over, dodging other families and their cameras. Mom immediately started fussing with my collar and smoothing down my hair. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart," she whispered, and I could see tears already forming in her eyes. Dr. Madison Chen. Can you believe it? Not doctor yet, Mom. That's if I get into the PhD program. When you get in, Dad corrected firmly. When? That's when I saw her. Ashley. My cousin Ashley, walking toward us in a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my textbooks for an entire semester. Her husband Derek followed behind her, looking uncomfortable in the heat and checking his watch. Ashley had always been the successful one in the family. MBA from Wharton, corner office in Manhattan, the kind of life that made relatives nod approvingly at family dinners. She'd made it very clear over the years that my path, working my way through a state school, then transferring to Cornell for my environmental science degree, was admirable but not quite real success. "There's our little graduate." Ashley's voice carried that particular tone she used, the one that sounded congratulatory but felt like a pat on the head. She gave me a quick hug, careful not to mess up her hair. "So exciting." "Thanks for coming," I said, meaning it despite everything. "I know it's a long drive from the city." "Oh, we were visiting Derek's parents anyway." She gestured vaguely toward the campus. "So this is where you've been taking your, what do you call them? Environmental classes?" The way she said it made my stomach tighten. Environmental science, with a focus on climate policy analysis. Right. Ashley nodded in that way people do when they're not really listening. "That's so nice that you found something you're passionate about." Derek stepped forward, extending his hand. "Congratulations, Madison. Ashley tells me you're planning to continue with school? PhD program, hopefully." "I'm waiting to hear back from a few places. More school?" Ashley's laugh was light, musical, and sharp as a blade. "Honey, at some point you have to enter the real world. It's great that you're following your interests and all, but environmental science." She paused, glancing around as if checking who might be listening. "That's not really a real degree, is it?" The words hit me like cold water. Around us, families were celebrating, taking pictures, laughing. The sun was shining, and somewhere a brass band was playing the university fight song. But in our little circle, everything had gone quiet. "What do you mean?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. Ashley's expression shifted slightly, as if she was just now realizing how her words had landed. But she didn't back down. She never did. "I just mean, you know, it's more of a hobby field, isn't it? Like art history or philosophy. Very interesting, very noble, I suppose. But not something that leads to actual career opportunities. Not like business or medicine or law." She reached out and touched my arm gently. "I'm not trying to be mean, sweetie. I just worry about your future. You're almost 30, and you're still in school, and for what? To study trees and recycling?" I felt my parents stiffen beside me. Mom's camera slowly lowered. Dad took a small step forward, but I held up my hand slightly. This was my moment to handle. "I study climate systems and policy implementation," I said quietly. "I've published 2 papers already, and I'm working on research that could influence federal environmental regulations. That's wonderful, honey. Ashley's tone was the same one you'd use to praise a child's crayon drawing. But let's be realistic about job prospects. How many people actually make a living from environmental things? Derek was staring at his shoes. My parents looked like they wanted to intervene but weren't sure how. Other families nearby were starting to notice the tension in our group. "Excuse me," a voice said behind me. "Madison Chen?" I turned to see Dean Williams approaching our little circle. She was a small woman with silver hair and the kind of presence that made rooms go quiet when she entered them. I'd met her once before, briefly, at an undergraduate research symposium. "Dean Williams," I said, my voice still shaky from Ashley's words. "Thank you so much for coming." "I wouldn't miss it," she said warmly, then looked around our group with interest. "Are these your family members?" I made quick introductions. Ashley immediately shifted into her professional mode, the one she used at networking events, extending her hand with a bright smile. "Such an honor to meet you, Dean Williams." I was just telling Madison how proud we all are of her little environmental degree. The dean's eyebrows rose slightly. "Little? Well, you know," Ashley continued, apparently not reading the room. "It's wonderful that she's following her passion, but we're all hoping she'll transition into something more practical soon. Something with real career potential." Dean Williams was quiet for a moment, studying Ashley with the kind of analytical gaze that had probably terrified generations of students. Then she looked at me. "Madison, would you mind walking with me for a moment? There's something I'd like to discuss with you before the ceremony begins." My heart jumped. "Of course." As we started to walk away, I heard Ashley whisper to Derek, "I hope I didn't say anything wrong." I was just being honest about her career prospects. Dean Williams must have heard it too, because she stopped walking and turned back around. "I'm sorry," she said to Ashley, her voice carrying clearly across the space between us. "Did you say something about career prospects?" Ashley's cheeks flushed slightly, but she nodded. I work in business, so I understand job markets. Environmental science is lovely, but it's not exactly a field with real opportunities." The dean was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, still polite, but with an edge that made me think of winter mornings. "I see," she said. "Madison, why don't you come with me? I believe we have quite a lot to discuss." As we walked away, I could feel Ashley's eyes on my back, and something in the dean's tone made my pulse quicken with a mixture of nerves and anticipation that I couldn't quite name. Dean Williams led me away from my family, past clusters of graduates and their relatives, toward the administrative building that overlooked the ceremony grounds. Her pace was brisk but not hurried, and I found myself having to take slightly longer steps to keep up. "Dean Williams," I started, "I'm really sorry about my cousin." She didn't mean, stop. She held up one hand without looking at me. "Don't apologize for other people's ignorance. It's beneath you." We walked up the stone steps to the building entrance. Through the tall windows, I could see the ceremony grounds below us, hundreds of folding chairs arranged in perfect rows, the stage where I'd receive my diploma in less than an hour, the families still gathering and taking pictures. "Do you know why I wanted to speak with you?" Dean Williams asked as she pushed open a heavy wooden door. "No, ma'am." She led me down a hallway lined with portraits of former university presidents, all stern-faced men in dark suits. At the end of the hall, she opened the door to a small office I'd never seen before. "Sit," she said, gesturing to a chair across from an oak desk. The room smelled like old books and coffee. Behind the desk, the window offered a perfect view of the ceremony stage. Dean Williams didn't sit. Instead, she stood with her back to me, looking out the window. 3 weeks ago," she said, "I received a call from the Environmental Protection Agency. They wanted to know if we had any exceptional graduating students who might be interested in a policy analyst position in their climate adaptation office." My heart started beating faster. I gave them one name. "Yours." She turned around and fixed me with that analytical stare again. "They've been following your research on coastal ecosystem resilience. Apparently, your paper on predictive modeling for sea level rise caught some attention in Washington." I stared at her. What? "The job comes with a starting salary of $85,000, full benefits. And they want you to continue your doctoral work part-time, with the agency covering tuition costs. The room felt like it was spinning slightly. Are you serious? I don't joke about career opportunities, Madison. Dean Williams sat down across from me, folding her hands on the desk. But there's something else. They also asked if you might be available to present some of your findings at a conference next month. Congressional staffers will be in attendance, people who write policy. I couldn't speak. 7 years of people telling me I was wasting my time, that environmental science was a dead end, that I should have chosen something practical. And now. The irony, Dean Williams continued, is that your cousin's husband works for a consulting firm that just lost a major contract with the EPA. Budget cuts in the private sector, while the federal government is expanding their environmental programs. She paused. Derek Morrison, isn't it? Morrison and Associates? I nodded numbly. Yes, I thought so. They've been trying to get that contract renewed for 6 months. She leaned back in her chair. Small world. Through the window, I could see the ceremony was about to begin. Graduates were lining up, families were taking their seats. Somewhere down there, Ashley was probably still explaining to my parents why my degree wasn't practical. Dean Williams, I said slowly, why are you telling me this? She was quiet for a moment, looking out the window again. 40 years ago, I was the only woman in my engineering program. Do you know what my advisor told me when I said I wanted to focus on environmental applications? What? He said it was nice that I wanted to save the trees, but engineering was about building things that mattered. Real infrastructure. Not tree-hugging nonsense. Her voice was calm, but I could hear something harder underneath. I spent the next decade proving him wrong. She stood up and walked to a bookshelf, pulling out a thick binder. These are the resumes of students who've been hired by major environmental organizations in just the past 3 years. From our program alone. She dropped the binder on the desk with a heavy thud. 67 graduates. Average starting salary, $72,000. 3 are now directors of state environmental agencies. 1 advises the UN on climate policy. I stared at the binder. Your cousin is operating from old information, Dean Williams said. Environmental science is one of the fastest growing fields in the country. We can't train students fast enough to meet demand. She sat back down. The question is, what are you going to do with that information? Before I could answer, there was a knock on the door. A young man in a suit poked his head in. Dean Williams? I'm sorry to interrupt, but they're ready for you to give the opening remarks. Thank you, James. We'll be right down. She looked at me. Madison, I have a proposition for you. My mouth felt dry. What kind of proposition? Every year, we select 1 graduating student to offer closing remarks at the ceremony. Someone whose work represents the best of what this university stands for. She paused. This year, I'd like that student to be you. The words hit me like a physical force. Me? But I don't have anything prepared. You don't need a speech, Dean Williams said firmly. You just need to tell them what environmental science means to you. What it's meant to your life. She stood up and smoothed down her academic robes. What it could mean to theirs. Through the window, I could see my family in the 3rd row. Mom had her camera ready. Dad was checking his watch. And Ashley was sitting between them and Derek, occasionally looking around the crowd with that slight smile she wore when she was the most important person in a room. 2,000 people, Dean Williams said quietly, including several dozen high school students who are trying to decide what to study in college, including some parents who think environmental science is just a phase their kids are going through. She looked directly at me. Including your family. My hands were shaking slightly. What if I mess up? Then you mess up in front of people who love you. Dean Williams walked to the door and held it open. But somehow, I don't think that's going to be a problem. As we walked back toward the ceremony grounds, she spoke without looking at me. The microphone will be yours after I introduce the graduates. You'll have as much time as you need. We paused at the edge of the crowd. Madison? Yes? Don't let them make you smaller than you are. She walked away toward the stage, leaving me standing at the back of the ceremony, my heart pounding and my mind racing. In the distance, I could see Ashley adjusting her hair and checking her phone, completely unaware that everything was about to change. The microphone was waiting.